Most men live trapped in a fatal misconception. They believe a woman's interest is something to be earned, measured, and meticulously cultivated through effort, attention, and unrelenting persistence. They fall into the trap of over-explaining, over-committing, and overexposing themselves, never realizing that this frantic pursuit destroys the very desire they seek to ignite. Machiavelli, centuries ahead of his time, saw a deeper truth. Desire is never manufactured through chasing. It is a shadow, a reaction to perception, scarcity, and power. Understand this: a woman never competes for a man she fully possesses. What she craves, often unconsciously, is the man who remains partially out of reach, the man whose motives, thoughts, and availability are deliberately veiled. She is drawn to what she cannot fully understand, what she cannot control, and what she cannot predict. The rules of attraction are not about proving yourself or showing her how worthy you are. They are about constructing a psychological environment in which your value becomes undeniable, irresistible, and strategically rare. In the coming exploration, you will learn how to move beyond the desperate efforts of ordinary men. You will see how controlled absence, deliberate mystery, and the mastery of perception are not mere tactics. They are psychological levers that pull at the hidden desires women rarely admit even to themselves. Desire is not chased, it is engineered. And once you understand this, the game shifts entirely in your favor. Step 1. Establish unshakable self-ownership. Before any strategy, any maneuver, or any game of desire can succeed, there is one non-negotiable foundation. You must own yourself completely. Machiavelli, ever the master of human behavior, understood this better than most. People follow the man who commands his own destiny, not the one who waits for permission, validation, or approval. Women, whether consciously or not, are drawn to this magnetic autonomy because it signals something rare: a man whose life is his own, whose decisions are absolute, and whose time is non-negotiable. Imagine a man who bends under pressure, who shifts his values to please others, who waits for a woman's approval before acting. Now contrast him with the man whose choices are deliberate, whose boundaries are inviolable, and whose actions are aligned entirely with his own priorities. The difference is palpable. The first invites control, the second inspires desire. When a woman senses this level of self-ownership, it awakens a subtle, almost primal curiosity. She begins to wonder, who is this man who cannot be bent, broken, or bought? What does he value so fiercely? This curiosity is not manufactured. It is a natural response to a man who has made himself scarce, not in presence, but in the availability of his attention, energy, and compliance. Self-ownership is your invisible leverage. It is silent, often unnoticed by others, yet devastatingly effective. It transforms ordinary interactions into a psychological battlefield where you are never the target, only the standard. Women will not compete for someone pliable, needy, or endlessly available. They compete for a man whose essence cannot be tamed, whose mind cannot be predicted, and whose life cannot be possessed. In mastering this first step, you do not merely attract desire, you command it. And in the game of attraction, command is the currency that cannot be faked, borrowed, or replaced. Step 2. Become a master of rarity. Desire thrives on scarcity. This is not a simple trick of physical absence. It is far more subtle, far more powerful. It is the art of psychological rarity. A man who is always available, always predictable, and always immediately responsive becomes ordinary, invisible, and easily forgotten. Machiavelli recognized a truth that most men never grasp. unpredictability is magnetic. The moment a woman cannot anticipate your attention, your reactions, or your presence, her mind begins to work overtime. She begins to fill the gaps you leave with her imagination, curiosity, and emotional investment. This is the essence of obsession. The brain does not crave what is constant, safe, or endlessly accessible. It craves what is uncertain yet valuable, what is fleeting yet tantalizing. When you cultivate rarity, you force her mind to chase the unknown, to construct scenarios, fantasies, and questions about you. Every delay in response, every carefully measured absence, becomes a spark that ignites deeper intrigue. But rarity is not chaos. It is deliberate, strategic, and controlled. Do not disappear aimlessly. Do not ignore recklessly. Instead, create an aura of selective attention. Respond on your terms. Engage when it aligns with your life, your energy, and your values. In doing so, you signal one of the most compelling forms of value a woman can sense: autonomy. You are not there to fill her void. You are there because your presence has meaning, weight, and purpose. The result is psychological tension, the invisible pull that makes her thoughts return to you, even when you are absent. You are no longer just a man she interacts with. You become a puzzle, a challenge, a prize whose pieces she wants to explore, but cannot fully claim. In mastering the art of rarity, you shift the dynamics completely. Desire is no longer something you chase. It becomes something she constructs, projects, and ultimately fights to attain. Step 3. Signal high value. Without words, desire and competition do not emerge from your explanations or declarations. They arise from perception. Women compete not because they fear losing you, but because they sense you are not a prize easily obtained, a life easily monopolized, or a man whose attention is unlimited. True attraction is forged in the subtle cues of value, not in the desperate proclamations of it. Machiavelli understood this better than most. Influence, power, and desire operate invisibly. The most potent signals are the ones never spoken aloud. Your lifestyle, your demeanor, and your interactions should all whisper a single truth. You are abundant. You have priorities that cannot be ignored, pursuits that command your focus, and a world that does not revolve around her alone. Subtlety is the weapon here. A fleeting glance at your schedule, a casual mention of other engagements, the effortless ease with which you carry yourself. Each act silently communicates that your time, energy, and attention are scarce, valuable, and highly sought after. This is not about arrogance or showing off. It is about authenticity. You do not fabricate options or inflate your life to impress. You simply live according to your own terms, and in doing so, you become a standard she unconsciously measures herself against. She begins to compete, not with other women directly, but for access to a man whose world she wants to enter, whose attention she desires, and whose life she senses she cannot fully control. The power of high-value signaling lies in invisibility. You never announce it. You never justify it. She should feel it in the weight of your presence, the decisiveness of your actions, and the calm confidence that comes from knowing your life is whole and complete without her validation. A simple glance, a measured laugh, or the quiet prioritization of your own time communicates more than words ever could. I am rare. I am in demand, and I am not anyone's to claim. In mastering this step, you stop chasing desire. Instead, you create a gravitational pull. Women do not just notice you, they begin to orbit your world, captivated by the invisible signals that broadcast your unmatched value. Step 4. Create the psychological reversal. Desire is rarely straightforward. Often, a woman's initial disinterest is not rejection. It is a test, a challenge, or an unconscious probe into your confidence and value. Most men misread this entirely. They panic, chase harder, and reveal neediness, destroying attraction in the process. Machiavelli would have called this a predictable error of the weak. The moment you show desperation, you surrender the invisible power that compels desire. The strategic response is the psychological reversal. When she tests you, withdraw. Not angrily, not with games, but with calm, deliberate detachment. When she challenges your attention, respond with measured indifference. Do not over-explain. Do not beg for understanding. In your silence or in your controlled response, you create an invisible tension, a magnetic pull that forces her mind to fill the gap you leave. Here's the subtle mechanism at play. The human mind is wired to chase what it fears losing. When she senses your attention is not guaranteed, when she perceives that she cannot fully control or predict your actions, her subconscious begins to compete, not consciously, but through thoughts, emotions, and imagination. Every withdrawal, every pause, every moment of nonchalance becomes a psychological lever, shifting her from passivity to pursuit. The Machiavellian reversal is elegantly simple. The more she believes she is losing control over you, the more she feels compelled to reclaim it. Your calm detachment is not coldness, it is strategy. It signals strength, autonomy, and value that cannot be bargained for. You are no longer a man to be pursued. You become the standard, the prize, the enigma she must decode, and in trying to decode you, she becomes invested, intrigued, and increasingly obsessed. Master this reversal, and ordinary attraction transforms into a silent battlefield of desire. You no longer chase, you do not plead, you do not compromise your autonomy. Instead, you allow the natural laws of perception, scarcity, and challenge to work on her mind, turning initial disinterest into powerful, self-generated competition. Step 5. Introduce subtle intermittent rewards. Once she begins to compete, your next move is not to drown her in constant validation, but to master the art of unpredictability. Human psychology does not crave what is always available. It craves what appears and disappears, what dances on the edge of possibility. This is where intermittent reinforcement becomes your most powerful weapon. A sudden glance, a short, almost dismissive compliment, a moment of attention pulled away just as it begins to feel secure. These micro-signals, given sparingly and with precision, create a loop in the mind. She doesn't know when or if she'll receive the next reward, and that uncertainty is addictive. The brain, wired for survival and pursuit, lights up under unpredictability. Each small acknowledgement becomes magnified, each rare gesture amplified in meaning. This scarcity transforms simple attention into something that feels like a prize, something earned rather than given. The result? She becomes the pursuer, chasing the next moment of recognition, addicted to the very tension you have crafted. Machiavelli's genius lay in understanding that desire does not thrive in abundance. It thrives in calculated scarcity. Give too much, and tension collapses. Give too little, and the connection withers. But strike the perfect balance, subtle rewards interlaced with withdrawal, and you create an invisible gravitational pull she cannot escape. It is not the flood of attention that binds her. It is the uncertainty of when, or if, it will arrive again. And in that uncertainty, obsession is born. Step 6. Activate curiosity and speculation. Revealing everything is the death of fascination. The moment you become fully readable, the game ends, the pursuit dies, and interest dissolves. This is why you must become a puzzle, never fully solved, never fully transparent. A man of depth does not place his entire story on the table. He reveals fragments, hints, glimpses of a much larger world hidden behind guarded eyes. Keep certain layers of yourself concealed. Leave stories unfinished. Share just enough emotion to spark intrigue, but always keep the majority veiled. A powerful presence is not defined by words. It is defined by silence, by the questions you leave unanswered. The human mind cannot resist curiosity. It is wired to close loops, to seek resolution, to decode mysteries. The less she knows, the more she speculates. The more she speculates, the more mental energy she invests in you. And the more energy she invests, the deeper her attachment grows. Machiavelli understood that the unknown is more intoxicating than the known. Certainty breeds boredom, while mystery breeds obsession. She does not just compete for your time, she competes for access to the chambers of your mind, the private chapters of your story, the guarded truths that others will never touch. Every unanswered question becomes a hook. Every incomplete story becomes a door she aches to unlock, and soon, she is no longer just curious, she is consumed. Because curiosity is not a passing thought, it is a fire. And once lit, it pushes her to chase, to compete, to prove herself worthy of discovering what you do not easily give. Step 7. Let her feel slight discomfort. Comfort is the enemy of pursuit. No one fights for what feels guaranteed. True competition is born not in ease, but in tension. In the delicate space where desire collides with uncertainty. This is why you must master the art of creating just enough discomfort to keep her leaning forward, never fully relaxed in her position. Do not always bend to her expectations. Do not rush to validate her assumptions. Subtle withdrawal, delayed responses, or a refusal to always be available. These are not acts of cruelty, they are acts of precision. Each small disruption shakes her certainty, and in that shaking, her desire intensifies. The psychology is simple, yet ruthless. What we fear losing, we fight hardest to keep. A woman who senses, even faintly, that your attention is not permanent, that your interest is not easily secured, will instinctively rise into competition. Her emotions tighten, her focus sharpens, her energy locks onto one mission, keeping what feels at risk. Machiavelli knew that respect and desire do not thrive in abundance. They flourish under the shadow of potential loss. When she realizes your presence is not something she can control, when she feels the weight of uncertainty, she begins to compete. Not because you demand it, but because her mind and heart leave her no choice. It is in this space, where comfort ends and tension begins, that attraction transforms into obsession. And it is here, in the careful orchestration of slight discomfort, that you secure the upper hand, not through force, but through the invisible strings of psychology. Step 8. Elevate your life, not her approval. This is the principle that separates men who are chased from men who are forgotten. Your life must be bigger than her influence. If your existence bends around her approval, you will never trigger true competition. You will only inspire comfort, and comfort kills desire. A man who defines himself through a woman's validation is a man without a center. He orbits her world instead of commanding his own. But when your life is rooted in purpose, when your achievements, your mission, and your vision stretch far beyond her grasp, you transform into a force she cannot control. Machiavelli would argue that power is magnetic, that power attracts power. When your world is filled with movement, ambition, growth, and discipline, she doesn't just want to be near you. She feels compelled to prove herself worthy of standing within it. Your value must not come from how she sees you, but from what you are without her. Your ambition, your craft, your social presence, your relentless refusal to settle for comfort. This is what ignites competition. Not the approval you seek, but the reality you embody. And here lies the paradox. The less you need her, the more she fights for you. The less you chase, the harder she runs. The less you bend, the more she breaks her own patterns to align with you. She does not compete for a man who clings. She competes for a man whose life she cannot monopolize, whose time she must earn, whose presence feels like a rare privilege instead of a guaranteed possession. When your life towers above approval seeking, you no longer play in her world. She fights to enter yours. And that, Machiavelli would say, is the ultimate leverage. Understand this: making a woman compete for you is not about tricks, coercion, or childish games. It is not about bending her will. It is about elevating your own. The true essence of power and attraction lies in becoming a presence that cannot be ignored, a mystery that cannot be fully solved, a force that cannot be owned. Scarcity is your weapon. Autonomy is your shield. Unpredictability is your spark. Mystery is your crown. These are not tactics of deception. They are instruments of psychology, wielded by those who understand that desire must be engineered, not begged for. A woman's indifference is not the end. It is the beginning. It is not rejection. It is the silent invitation to rise, to sharpen, to step into a higher form of self. The moment you chase, you give away power. The moment you stand still and demand through presence alone, you create gravity. And gravity does not beg, it pulls. Machiavelli's lesson is timeless. Competition is never born from pursuit. It is born from controlled scarcity, from the quiet confidence of a man who does not need, yet is needed. From a man whose life moves with such velocity, such intensity, that she cannot help but orbit it. When you master this balance, when you embody this principle, she will compete. Not because you forced her, not because you manipulated her, but because your existence demands it. That is the paradox of power. The less you reach, the more you are reached for. And in the end, she does not compete for your attention. She competes for access to a life that is already whole without her, a life that cannot be contained but must be earned.